Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Today, I'm going to be going through how to build fast setups on the new F126 cars. I'll explain what each setting changes, and how it affects the car on track, and how you can also adjust setups to fit your own driving style. Then, at the end of the video, I'll do a Hotlap so you can see how the setup actually performs out on track. Anyways, we're right into time trial at Suzuka, a track that I haven't done much of, and I've loaded the setup that I actually ran for my time, and I'll explain how to change things between quali and the race. You can see I'm 1500 in the world, not the best, and seventh on my friends list, so I'm gonna try to improve that. Anyways, we're gonna start out with the arrow, and the front and rear wings basically dictate how much downforce you have. Higher wings give you more grip, but increases the drag, causing you to lose top speed on the straights. Losing our front wing controls corner rotation, while rear wing controls rear end stability. Now, the meta for this year's car is actually to run a really big wing gap, which is the difference between your front and your rear wing number. So a more stable setup nowadays, while keeping a decent amount of rotation, will be a wing gap of around 8 to 15, but a more aggressive aero setup can be from 20 all the way to like 40. And I've even seen some setups run 50 front wing and 0 rear wing. But yeah, a good time trial setup I'd run around here would be like 45 on the front and 20 on the rear, which what we started out with. But yeah, you can see a wing gap of 25. But for a race, this could tend to be a bit unstable or even slow at times. So make sure to do a lot of experimenting and do a lot of testing and get it down to your own likings. Onto the transmission. There's two options: on throttle differential and off throttle differential. The on throttle differential dictates how fast your wheels rotate relative to each other. So when you use the throttle, in theory, lowering it allows the tires to rotate at different speeds. But there's no need to really complicate it. I would just leave it at 100 for most tracks because all tires rotating at the same time gives you the best amount of traction out of the corners. But I have seen setups run between like 85 and 100%. So just experiment with it and see what you like the most. After off throttle differential, basically controls wheel rotation when you're completely off the throttle. So when you're coasting or braking. A higher number gives you more stability, while lowering the value helps the car to rotate more. That's why in qualifying you normally want a ton of rotation, so I'd use maybe 20 for qualifying, but for races I'd run 25 or 30 to not kill the tires, and for super wet conditions it's viable to go all the way up to maybe 40. But throughout the setup you'll see that I have other options to help me get the same amount of rotation. So suspension and aero, the big wing gap in the aero, and what I've done for the suspension, you'll see, will help with the rotation that you get out of the car. So from the transmission, I just wanted more stability. That's why I'm putting it at 35 instead of like 20, like I said for qualifying. These cars can be really throttle happy. It's very easy to be throttle happy, so yeah, you just have to be careful. I'd run 30 as a baseline for most. Now, the easiest part besides the brakes is the suspension geometry. It's easily one of the biggest jokes in the game, and it looks really technical, but do not waste your time stuck on this page. For every setup, the fastest way for everything is all the way to the left. It's been like this for many past games, and when new games come out, it's always tested, but it always manages to be the same. All the way to the left for each value gives maximum possible traction and maximum mid corner rotation. So yeah, just don't get stuck on this. Leave it all the way to the left for each time. Even if you see a setup running it, just move it to the left. Trust me. For suspension, I'd say one of the most complicated parts. Basically, a lot of these options help balance out what the wings aren't doing. Stiffer suspension stops the car from bouncing on the straights, which can prevent you from scrubbing off speed. The strategy for both is to keep the front suspension stiff, and I'd always say above 36 maybe even 35 you could go. And I usually leave it at 41 anyways. For the rear suspension, I keep it on the softer side, so between 1 and 13, but 1 is a good point to just leave it as a baseline setup. And the softer rear suspension allows the chassis of the car to lean on the rear tires during acceleration, which can help maximize traction for corners like Bahrain turn 1 and turn 2, where you need traction to help not spin on the exit. Now, for the anti-roll bars, or ARBs, you'll normally hear people say, for short. You normally want very soft front ARB and a very stiff rear ARB. As front ARBs help with stability and rear ARBs control the responsiveness and rotation. Running 1 on the front while 21 on the rear gives you the maximum corner rotation while making it super unstable. So a good rule of thumb is if the car feels a bit too loose, then add a few clips or clicks of front ARB, and yeah, and I wouldn't go much higher than 17 rear ARB for most tracks, most race setups, but since it's time trial or even qualifying, you could run really high on the front ARB or the rear ARB, sorry. Um, but yeah, now for ride height, this part can either make your entire setup great or it can ruin it. But yeah, lowering the ride height increases your aerodynamic downforce and cornering performance. But if you go too low on it, it will cause your car to just bottom out on the straights and curbs, and you would lose a ton of top speed. And let's just say you really, really don't want to bottom out on a big curb, or you might just die. But anyways, for front ride height, you have to find a good middle ground. With no ground effect area in these cars, it doesn't hurt too much to go higher in the suspension just to be safe, but you don't want it to be too high. I wouldn't go higher than 24 or 25 for most tracks because it will just cause the car to not want to turn. But yeah, a good baseline would be 23 on the front, which you can see I'm running here. And another thing to explain right before the rear ride height is rake. Basically, what rake is the difference between the front and the rear ride height of your car. Increasing rear ride height creates a bigger gap, giving you a lot more mid-corner rotation because it slightly loosens the rear end of the car. So, the tracks or tracks with a lot of fast corners like Qatar demand a higher ride height on the rear just so that the car doesn't bottom out, due to the aero load on the rear. Um, I would keep it between 42 and 48. I went right in the middle with this as a 45. And that's basically all you need to know for suspension. On to the brakes. The most simple part I'd say so far. For brake pressure, always put it to 100. Even if you have lockups and you just want the maximum brake pressure all the time. Now for brake bias, under hard and heavy braking, the weight shifts all the way to the front tires, putting it well, yeah, putting all the weight on the front tires. And that means if you have a low brake bias, like 51, 52, or even 53, the rears will lock because they have no weight on them, and you will just end up spinning out. For heavy braking zones like Monza Turn 1, I would leave the brake bias at 57 or 58, sort of as like a baseline, and it should help you cause to lock the rears less at corners, like, or tracks like that. But for trucks like Catalunya or Monaco, a lower brake bias will be better as it will increase your amount of rotation, and there's less braking needed at those two tracks, so it's not too difficult to run a lower brake bias. Another rule of thumb I would say is if you're running 54 brake bias in the 25 cars, I would just up it by 2 clicks. If you're running 56, maybe up it by 2 clicks. Just if you have a setup for an F125 car and you're trying to convert it, the easiest thing to do first is the brakes. Just up it by 2, I would say. So like Monaco, I would run 53 sometimes, up it to 55, and it should work well for you. Even changing it by 1 click will do a lot. So yeah. But you also see during the Hotlap and during qualifying, I do enjoy changing it a lot for the corners. So just to get a little bit more rotation or maybe more stopping power out of the car. But that's basically all you need to know about the brake bias. Now, best for last, the tire pressures. Higher pressure, higher pressure makes the tire harder, reducing the contact with the ground, which can drop tire temperatures and will maximize your straight line speed. But it does sacrifice the grip you have on turn-in, which can make the car feel really, really lazy. Now, the meta, and it's been like this for a few years, is to just run maximum front pressures to get straight line and stability, but run lower like 23 or 22 on the rears to keep a large amount of contact on the rear tires, giving you the most amount of grip and traction. But since it's time trial, in time trial there's no tire wear and there's no and or tire temperatures actually stay the same the entire lap throughout the entire lap. So leaving it at the lowest for rears actually work really well for most tracks, and putting it a little bit lower than maximum to get a little bit more grip from the front, and a little bit more turn in, so the car doesn't feel as lazy, will just work really really well for you. But I wouldn't recommend this in the race. In the race, I would always go higher on tire pressures, depending on tire wear. You have to test that out yourself, of course. Um, and just always make sure the front tire pressure is always higher than the rear. And yeah, that's basically all you need to know about the tires. But yeah, that's basically it for the setup. If you have any questions, put it in the comments down below. And yeah, enjoy the hot lap.